I'm Rob, the curator of Awards Heaven, and I'm here with Will Tracy, screenwriter from Bugonia. Will, it's so exciting that we get to talk about this script because the movie's so highly acclaimed and there's so much to kind of dive into. So I think we should just get right into it. Um, you watched the Korean original once, apparently, took some notes,
Mhm.
and then you set it aside so that you wouldn't feel obligated to service it. So, in what ways did you reinvent the story for a contemporary American context?
I'm not sure how much I was thinking contemporary and American specifically what I could do. I mean, some of that I just couldn't help. I am American and I suppose contemporary to this time. What I knew I wanted to do was to structure the film around, I guess, to make a more conversational movie, to structure around these big, well, what counts for a set piece in a movie like this, which is these big chats. There's two in the basement in my head, and then there's one upstairs for dinner. The first chat being sort of when she comes to her senses, and he says, I think you're an alien, and she says, no, I'm not. The second chat being she's had sort of a night to process her thoughts, and she comes at him with this what she believes is a killing argument, which is, you're an echo chamber. And of course, he's ready for that argument. He's heard that one before. As he says, I've read the same 5,000 think pieces in the Times about that. But nevertheless, in the process, I think she reveals a bit about him, and she reveals a bit about herself. And then the kind of final long conversational set piece at the dinner table upstairs when they've reached this sort of new level, they believe in their relationship, which they can have more of a civil conversation as equals, and of course that breaks down. So I thought, well, that's it for me because what I didn't want was a film that was just 2 hours of you're an alien, no, I'm not. Not only becomes quite either you keep doing that to diminishing returns, or it turns into sort of a torture movie, which I didn't really want to write. I wanted to write two people with very dug in kind of cultural and political attitudes from opposite ends of an extreme opposite ends of a divide, and what happens when they're actually face to face and not just shouting at a version of that person on the internet.
Yeah, and that's pretty much where I'm headed in terms of the way I feel this film does reflect a contemporary American context because so much of what we do and say on a daily basis, online particularly, is seems to be dug in on our team, whatever jersey we're
Yeah,
wearing.
that's right.
And, I just love how this film really deconstructs that. Um, and so when I saw the film a few months ago, I decided to look up, what is Bugonia? I realized what it meant. It's an ancient belief that
Mhm.
life can spontaneously arise from decay. How did that idea shape the way you thought about the birth of belief systems in film, like from conspiracy thinking to revolution? Because I mean, if you look at it this from a really high meta level, that's I think what the film is trying to say, or one of the things that the film is trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the title, yeah, I think Yorgos and I both liked the idea of, yeah, the idea of new life, as you said, arising from the death of this big lumbering beast, right? But beyond that, look, there's also some non-specific associations that I like. That's what a good title does, right? Because Bugonia also sounds a bit like a flower. It sounds a bit like a bug. It sounds a bit like either an alien planet or some country halfway across the world from America. It also sounded to me a little bit like a mental disorder, something that someone might come down
That's
with
what I
it,
thought it
acute case.
was.
Yeah, right. So I think I liked all those associations, both grotesque and beautiful. Um, and yeah, I mean, in terms of this, the second part of your question, sorry, was you had asked about how it relates to.
Yeah, just how
Sorry.
it relates to the way in which people seem to have this dialogue depending on
Yeah.
what side you're from. And this
Yeah.
film really breaks that apart.
That's right. Yeah, no, exactly. I think, well, first of all, maybe the movie is continuing that conversation in a way because I think Yorgos and I were quite clear that the movie would be ambiguous, that I think it's okay, and I think even prefer that people seem to be quite divided on, even the ending of this film, whether it's a bleak ending or a hopeful ending. And for me, it tends to be on the more hopeful side. For others, it's incredibly nihilistic and bleak. And that's I'm not going to say anyone's wrong. I think the movie has room for both of those arguments. And I would be uncomfortable with a movie that programmatically was giving was saying any one thing politically or culturally at the end of the film. And in terms of, I approached the characters with that same kind of ambiguity. It would have been quite upsetting to me if Teddy was interpreted as being a sort of like boilerplate conspiracy theorist in terms of what that means nowadays in our culture in America, which tends to mean you're stupid or you're crazy or you're either a right-wing nut job or a lunatic leftist. And he's really neither. He's really none of those things. To me, I don't think he's stupid. I don't think he's crazy, and I don't think you can sort him anywhere politically. I mean, one of the things that I thought about while I was writing the film, which I think only has become more true. I wrote the film 5 years ago, and I think in the last 5 years, this has only become more true that whenever there's a sort of extreme figure who takes extreme action in this country, whether it's a so-called domestic terrorist or, a shooter or an assassin or a kidnapper or whatever it is, there's this immediate rush online. We've all seen it, right? Where everyone tries to kind of assign that person to the other team. Oh, it's one of them. He's
Yeah.
MAGA or he's Antifa or whatever it is. And of course, then and people kind of make up their minds about that within the first hour, and it doesn't matter that a week later the evidence comes out that actually this person is kind of neither here nor there. Like most people, they're kind of a mess in terms of incoherent opinions about the world that they live in. I mean, they're sort of like, oh, they're a registered Republican, but they support. They have an Antifa badge on their jacket, but then they're like a gun nut, but then
Yeah.
also they identify as non-binary. It's all over the place. And that's because how most of us are. We don't necessarily, I think we're able to deal with quite a bit of cognitive dissonance, right? We're not totally coherent in our beliefs because our beliefs are formed by very diverse emotional experiences that make us who we are. And so I think that's part of what the film is trying to do, right? Is trying to, Teddy, as he says himself in that dinner conversation, I used to be this and that, and I wore all the badges, and I went to the grocery store shopping and hungry and bought everything, until he found the thing that was personal to him. He found the thing that spoke to him, which really kind of came from his own head. He was the only person who had a story that was compelling to him. And so, yeah, I think that's the most interesting way to write characters for me. And it was crucial to me that he was not interpreted as being just a sort of toxic incel male or whatever people say, the boogeyman that people write about in think pieces.
Yeah, that would have been so boring. And I
Yeah.
love how you are so spot on and so prescient. Like, obviously, 5 years ago, we were obviously going through that kind of dialogue and discourse, but these days, it feels like it's gone up 1 billion%.
Right.
And yeah, so prescient. Let's talk more about now the craft of screenwriting because a lot of this film is a two-hander pressure cooker. The movie's central engine is, a hostage situation, and it plays like that pressure cooker dialogue about belief and power and control. So, what did you learn, given your experience over the years on other projects, about writing two-person scenes where the stakes just keep expanding? Like, is there a particular style of writing that you think is more appropriate for that type of scene?
Yeah, I mean, I just on a very basic level, I think you just have to make sure that everyone in that room has a good argument. It doesn't mean they have to have a perfect argument. They very much neither of them do, right?
Yeah,
But I think what you want is for the audience to feel as though they are being there's a push and pull there between feeling sympathetic, probably initially, to Michelle, right? She's a woman kidnapped by two men chained to a bed in a basement. It's difficult under what appear to be quite false pretenses. So you're naturally going to be sympathetic to her. But of course, as time goes on, you see Teddy a bit more in his element, interacting with his cousin at work, with his coworkers. You learn a little bit more about his beliefs, a little bit more about his, I guess, his both his material and his emotional reality of his life. And he's not so crazy. In fact, he's not even particularly wrong about much. I mean, he has a point. I have a lot of time for Teddy personally. Um, and then, of course, it's really a three-hander, right? Because you have Don in the basement too,
True.
who is. But I mean, it feels like a two-hander. You're correct because two of the people in that room have this force of personality and are much more, I guess, verbose in their articulation of their worldview. But Don's worldview is the one that's I'm probably the most sympathetic to. I mean, he's really, if Teddy's trying to save the world and Don's trying to save Teddy, really. And he has, I think he's sort of the emotional intelligence of the film, in which I think he can kind of he, above all, and this is, I think, even more apparent on a second watch, that he is quite aware of Teddy and Michelle's emotional biases, and how they're both trying to manipulate him, Don, um, and how um, and how confused they both are, really, and how confused the whole and hopeless the whole situation appears. So, yeah, it was, in terms of keeping it surprising and interesting, just these people in a room. I knew the movie would fail if it was just 2 hours of "you're an alien, no, I'm not," and it would just devolve into either repetition or torture. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I wanted to keep that relationship, again, as I said earlier, I just wanted to keep that relationship interesting. And what gets
Mm.
revealed over time is not so much whether she's an alien or not, although that does eventually become revealed. You just learn a little bit about who they are as people, and how these dug-in cultural attitudes that they have are informed by, um, uh, yeah, emotional experience, things that happen to them. What is this
Yeah.
really about for Teddy, and what is this really about for Michelle? That's what gets revealed more so than, a genetic code.
That's right. Although, and by the way, I think that's way more realistic and
Yeah, that's right.
relatable, you
That's
know?
right.
But as an aside, by the way, I love the Teddy character, and I was very surprised that I would do that. First, I thought, ugh, this is just going to be a cartoon extremist. No, not at all. And he's
Yeah,
uncomfortably correct in many
that's
ways.
right.
And
That's
I really
right.
started siding with him. Like, that's the beauty of this script. I was not expecting that. And so I wonder then, how intentional was that? Because you don't really reveal that until halfway through, when we start to side with him a little. And it made me
Mhm.
uncomfortable, but also, it just is what it is until the very end, which we'll talk about in a sec.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was quite intentional for me. I mean, as I said, I have quite a lot of sympathy for Teddy. I mean, I don't, obviously, I find many of his methods unsound. I don't believe everything that he believes, but, if he feels a certain way about the world that he lives in, his community, his family, what's happened to it, his workplace, his country, just the world at large, that there's something that feels he feels quite isolated. He feels as though we've all become a bit atomized from any sort of democratic or civic project in which anyone's being looked out for, really. All that seems to be eroding and diminishing. I think he's correct. I mean, he might find a slightly, he might think the culprit is an alien species. In the end, that's probably the thing that he's not right about, right? In the end, what is revealed is that we sort of did that to each other. Not that our cause is hopeless. I personally don't agree with the decision that Michelle or the makes at the end of the film. I don't think the movie is condoning that.
No.
I think really any bleak interpretation of that film's ending assumes that the choice that she makes is the correct one. I don't think it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was, I guess, easy to approach Teddy from an empathetic place when um, I'm quite I have a lot of time again for what he feels is immiserating us.
Yeah. I want to jump straight to the ending actually while we on this topic because
Yeah.
I loved the ending so much. I did not see it coming, and I do understand that, some people said it was bleak or
Yeah.
nihilistic or unethical. I thought it was funny, which completely surprised me, but again, probably
Yeah.
not surprising given your writing and how funny it can be. What emotional target were you and Yorgos actually aiming for, and what did you do on the page, I guess, to prevent the film from insisting on a single correct interpretation?
Yeah. I mean, for some of it is just, as I said before, if we start from a standpoint of at no point does the film condone the decision that Michelle makes at the end of the film. And once you start from that standpoint, and you start from the standpoint that this has not happened, and this I don't think this is going to happen. So therefore,
No.
by definition, I it can't. To me, it's just definitionally not bleak because a bleak ending is a film that shows you the world as purports to show you the film as it really world as it really is, and says, well, that's it. I guess there's nothing we can do because
Mm.
that's the way the world really is. And of course, that's not the way the world really is at the end of this film, right? We're not going to be eliminated in that way. I don't feel hopeless and bleak at the end of that film. To me, it's meant to be a sort of a reminder when you see all this tableau of human life, right? These people and these odd and funny and wonderful and awful and banal and extraordinary tableau. It's meant to, be a reminder of everything that we are, good and bad, and everything that we'd be missing without us on this planet. Um, but then also to remind us of what our relationship with our planet is, because as soon as we're gone, and especially if you stay through the very end title credits, you kind of hear the sound of quiet, but also then of nature, of life returning. Of a storm comes and then it passes, and yeah, those that's sort of I guess that's those the cyclical nature of nature and life, and that's its own kind of hopefulness as well. So that's how I approach the ending of the film. But it is, of course, yes, it's quite some of the moments in those at the very ending and that tableau are quite funny and intentionally quite funny. And it's okay that absolutely okay to be laughing at that as well. I'm not very interested in an ending or a film that is so serious that it can't contain moments of laughter, dark or not.
Absolutely, I totally agree with that. Well, speaking of being funny, your writing can be razor funny and still carry real moral and emotional weight, as in Succession, The Menu. Well, this is a question that I always struggle with because I never really know what the writer's going to tell me because I find this a really difficult concept for me to actually even conceive of. But how do you decide what techniques you rely on to make a line land as comedy while also doing serious character work underneath? That's really complicated to me.
Yeah, I mean, in a film like Bugonia, which is a comedy in some ways and is funny, but um, other than a few moments, um, the characters they're not telling jokes really. They don't think they're
Mm,
being funny, right? They are taking themselves quite seriously. They're playing it quite straight. The actors are playing it quite straight. That's always just, to me, that's the key to these things, right? Is that the situations can be quite heightened and extreme, and some of the comedy or the feeling of that off kilter, some even find it absurd, or some have described it as surreal, but that's sort of what you're laughing at, and the extreme tension and these people in this ridiculous situation that also happens to be a quite serious situation,
yeah.
a kidnapping of a CEO, and it's quite life or death. It's quite scary, but also her head is shaved. She's got this white makeup on. What they're claiming feels patently absurd to us. So, and also they're not stupid, Teddy and Don, but they're not natural criminals, right? They're quite hapless as criminals.
Yeah.
And there's going to be some enjoyment in that. But they're not, I take them really seriously. And I try to imagine, again, just playing it straight and within an absurd context is the way to go for me. And I try to imagine what these two people would really say to get their point across in this moment, to convey their argument. And they don't always do a great job of it, which is also quite human, right? And also quite real. They're sometimes their arguments are quite flawed. And so that's really the key to me, as long as there's a kind of emotional reality between amongst the characters and that they're taking this quite seriously.
Mm.
Um, then I think it keeps the comedy from devolving into, I guess, a weightless silliness.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That wouldn't work at all. Given the film resists spoon feeding and a lot of the script leans into this ambiguity for quite some period of the film,
Yeah.
I wonder then when you're breaking story in the beginning, and you're trying to work out how the narrative's going to play out, how do you decide what has to be clarified at certain points and what becomes more powerful when it stays unresolved and then maybe is revealed at the end? Like that's got to be a really fine line.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, I just maybe because I approach these scenes more from a kind of uh yeah, this argument and a kind in which the things are revealed kind of gradually over time about who these characters are emotionally. I just
Mm.
wasn't that interested in some ways with the central question of is she an alien or not?
Yeah.
And in a way, that helped me hide the football a little bit because um, I I didn't let my concern with that question outweigh these other things to me that were very interesting. And so, yeah, I guess that kind of as yes, I guess that's what it is in a way, is that um yeah, hopefully you're so concerned with this other subtextual argument that the characters are in, that you're not it doesn't become this what I feared the film would be, which is just, we're waiting to get the surprise, and then the surprise happens, and then once the surprise happens, there's no reason to see the movie again. That actually, I feel the film is I think more rewarding on its second viewing once you can kind of get that thing out of the way and focus
Mm.
on maybe the wider context or subtext of these conversations and who these characters are. It was probably
Mm.
quite, I think it was quite difficult for the actors, especially Emma. She has said many times it was the first time as an actor that she had to be thinking about what an audience would be thinking on the second viewing, which usually as an actor, you're not really concerned with that. You're kind of trying to stay in the moment. And if you're thinking about the audience at all, you're just thinking about what they're saying immediately on that first viewing. But for her, I mean, I think she was also concerned that this would be, she really wanted to make sure that the film had enough emotional nuance that you could see the film in a second time and notice all new things in her performance and in the kind of the characters in the world they inhabit.
Actually, I really highly recommend to people to watch this film again,
Yeah,
because on the second viewing, I wasn't expecting this because I knew it was going to happen. I knew how it was going to end. I knew that whether she was an alien, that the big reveal,
yeah,
and it's not about that. And then I was able to watch for the very beautifully played nuances that the actors were giving us. Um, and so to that end, I just then wondered, um, Yorgos Lanthimos didn't like dismantle this script and completely redo it. It's still very much a Yorgos film, but
yeah.
I feel like he honored your screenplay. Um, and I wonder then, what did you most value about that collaboration with him? Because this is very much a Will Tracy screenplay, but it's also very much a Yorgos Lanthimos film as
Yeah,
well.
for sure. Yeah, no, I mean, I guess that's the immediate thing that I'm so grateful for is that yeah, he didn't try to turn it into something that it wasn't. He didn't have these long talks where some directors, when they don't write a script, there's this sort of crisis of authorship where even though they know it says directed by them at the end of the movie, that there's this feeling that it won't be seen as them unless they can really get in there and make every fingerprint on the movie theirs. And it's almost like they turn the movie into a puzzle that they can solve. So it's like, oh, what is this movie really about? How can I solve this puzzle of a script that you've written? And then they kind of make it more the kind of thing that they want it to be, and in trying to understand what the film is saying or what the film is, they overtalk it, they overthink it, and then they change the script and the story and the film into being something quite over-explained and not as interesting or as ambiguous as it was before. And Yorgos that's just not his style at all. I mean, he didn't want to overtalk it at all. He had very clear, actionable notes to make it maybe a bit more in his cinematic language, but not in any way to change, any of the certainly any of the dialogue or the kind of emotional essence of the story, and or even structurally that much. So I'm incredibly grateful for that, and I'd work with him again in a second, anytime. I mean, he was very considerate of me and my work, and even on set, I mean, he just treated it like a play. He didn't wasn't throwing out pages and winging it and improving it and throwing in his own lines and altering the text in any way. I mean, he was just quite faithful, and he just knew what needed to be done. I think he's someone he's like a lot of great directors. I think he's very certain in what he wants, and that also means that he's very certain in what he likes. So, and he doesn't like much. And so when he finds something that he likes, I think he wants to honor it. And he thinks he doesn't want to fuck with it too much.
Yeah, and that must be so refreshing,
Yeah.
because this film feels very unusually authored in its voice and argument, and visually and sonically, of course. There's some really striking elements in the film, but I feel like your screenplay is really tight, and I found it just so compelling, Will, really honestly. And
Oh, thank you, Rob.
to
That's
that
really nice.
Yeah, on that note, on a final note, how do you feel about the way the film has been received by not only the industry critics, but fans and people online? It seems to have sparked some conversation about the way in which we all deal with each other online and, of course, in the real world.
Mhm.
And it also has sparked a lot of conversation about, the what is truth, what is belief, and
Yeah.
yeah, I'm wondering what you think about that.
Well, I'll be honest. I mean, I try, I try not to look at too much of what is said and written, because as soon as you do, for every
Yeah.
every five nice things, you'll see something quite cruel. And I'm someone cruel is not even that's not even, sometimes it's, I think, intentionally meant to be cruel and hurtful. I think other
Mm.
times it's someone wanting to make a strong opinion made very forcefully, that's maybe this will stand out from some of the other opinions. And a lot of times it's criticisms that I think I'm scared to read them, because I think they might be valid. I mean, I'm one of those people who, I'm not someone who with the confidence to just say like, all these criticisms are bullshit for X, Y, and Z. I think I read everything and I sort of believe it. And even, by the way, even the nice notices, if I see something that says, Yorgos Lanthimos working from a clever script by Will Tracy, I see clever, and I immediately turn that into a criticism. Clever means like
What does that mean?
fun but shallow, so
You
so I'm
can't
just
win. You just
impossible
can't
at that
win.
stuff. So I really try not to look at stuff, especially it's from people who have said things in the past that seemed quite astute and I agree with. It's quite damaging to me when I see them tweet something about the film that's sort of a little bit dismissive. Then I think, oh God, I am a fraud. So I try to avoid looking at that stuff, I'll be honest. But from what I've seen, I do like that people seem to be responding to um, I guess, the challenge of the film, to that it is maybe somewhat divisive film, but it's certainly a film that's engineered to create a bit more of a conversation rather than just like I had a blast with this movie or whoa, what a crazy ride. That people seem to want to be taking the film seriously, and even if they don't like the movie, to have a discussion about what that ending meant to them. And then it seems to be quite a robust discourse surrounding what the film is saying. And, not many films are even trying to say much of anything. So which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but this is a film I think that's trying to get at something. And so it's good that people are engaging it seriously on its own terms. And yeah, I hope that by and large people think the film is a good film.
Yeah, it's a damn good film. And as an aside, my takeaway from what you said is award-winning, very successful screenwriter Will Tracy still has imposter syndrome like everybody else. So
Oh,
we
everybody
all,
does. Oh yeah, my God. No, I mean it's the only way you can keep going at all. I think that's the great maxim about certainly about making any kind of art is the moment you think you've got it, you've lost it.
yeah,
So you have to, yeah.
yeah, absolutely. On that note, Will, thank you so much for your time. So congratulations on a really stunning script, and I hope it
Oh,
wins all the
thanks, buddy.
awards.
Thank you, Rob. I really appreciate it, man. Thank you. Have a good one.